When I was researching for the first book, one of the things I was most struck by was General Harmon. When I learned about his life, I was blown away. It reads like a Hollywood blockbuster. He's born in poverty, works his way through college, fights in World War I on horseback, ends up competing in the 1926 Olympics, fights in World War II where he commanded armored tank divisions at the Battle of the Bulge and the Kasserine Pass. I was struck that somebody could accomplish so many things and yet be barely a footnote in most military history.
I realized you wanted to become an author.
I've always been a storyteller and a person who appreciates good stories. And I never really set out to become a writer or author. Major Ryan Welch was flying a routine reconnaissance mission over Baghdad. 2 observation helicopters had gone down over a particularly bad area. And when he finally found them, they were in very bad shape. And there were 4 passengers that needed to ride out of the neighborhood. He strapped himself and the other pilot to the outside of the aircraft. This is called self-extraction. This is something that pilots brief on all of the time, but nobody ever actually has to do this. We have these boxes in the attic. They're full of American Indian artifacts. We have no idea where it came from. My father just knows that it came from his great-grandfather. He inherited it. After he retired, he figured out that his great-great-great-great-uncle was a federal Indian agent, and that's where he had picked some of this stuff up.
How do you become disciplined to do this kind of research, number one, and how do you avoid going down rabbit holes?
I remember mentioning this to President Schneider at one point when he asked me, how's that book coming? And I said, man, I keep going down these holes that don't really matter, but they're just so interesting. And he mentioned that's a typical pitfall with people who are doing research. So write it as you're doing your research. I like telling these stories because these are stories that nobody would ever hear if we left it up to the individuals. None of these guys would share their own stories. And if I would have shared with them that the working title for the book was Norwich Heroes in advance, I'll bet without exception they probably would have diplomatically bowed out of it. They're not people who seek the spotlight. By the time I retire, there will be a big stack of books of extraordinary stories to pass along to my son, right next to the boxes of Indian history that my father has passed along to me. And hopefully my son, once he's old enough, will stumble upon that stuff in the attic and he'll be inspired to keep that storytelling tradition going.